Wonderful. Okay. So, all right. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Welcome back to what I would say our normal schedule. We've made it through high holidays, and we're back with regular Kabbalat Shabbat, and of course the beginning of our education, which begins with our Learner's Minyan. The Learner's Minyan, for those who were not with us last year, we do once a month on the first Friday of every month, and we take a part of a service or a particular prayer and sort of pull it apart. We talk about its history, we talk about what are the, what's the choreography to it, what's the source of it, is it Talmudic, is it biblical, what do some people do, what other people do, and what's its importance. So I started last year with a few of the important prayers that I thought were at the time, and I think we'll probably repeat. What I wanted to do as we begin a new year of adult education and a new year of Learner's Minyan was to discuss the rubric, the set of the service itself. So it says here on the front here, it's the Saturday morning service, but that's sort of misleading. I'm using the Saturday morning service to as an example as to how we're going to analyze what are the services that we have in Judaism. So that could relate to Friday night, it could relate to Saturday morning, but Shachari Saturday morning really is the best way for us to understand the rubric of it, okay? So liturgy, of course, is the aspect of our religion that is prayers, that is psalms, all these aspects that help us to worship. And a liturgy is as a whole organized by services. So Friday night services, Saturday morning services, Havdalah services, obviously. Those services, each one of those services has what we call rubrics. And rubrics are what we call units or subunits that when you put them together create a service. So sort of a mathematical aspect. The best way to describe it is the way a street is divided into blocks. Some are short, some are long, but all are part of the same street. As you go down a service, some of the prayers are short, some of them are long, but they're all part of the same rubric. That makes sense. This means that you work your way through these rubrics in order to get to the next one. So if you walk down the street, you have to cross that block to get to that other block. And that's how services are created. One leads to another, one connects to another, and in order to get to that spot, you have to go through this spot. Just like a street, the blocks differ in appearance. If you're walking down one street, it looks very different from another. One part of the street, it looks one part of another, and the function of it is different. So if we have our liturgy, our rubric, that is divided into these blocks of subunits or rubrics, we see how our services come to be. And we will notice as we worship on Saturday mornings, as we worship on Friday nights, we'll see some rubrics that look similar, some rubrics which are identical, and some which are completely different, some that appear in one but do not appear in another. One note that I found out was sometimes it's common to call an entire rubric a prayer. That's okay if people want to call this group, well, this prayer or whatever it is, that's fine, not a big deal. If that's the case, then the other terminology would be long prayers and short prayers. So I try to get very visual on your handouts here. As you see, as you'll turn the page, you'll see there's blocks and all these sort of things, because I really want to give you a visual idea of what we do when we come to services. So you see the whole thing expands at the top of the next page under the liturgy. We divide it into sample rubrics. If it's 4 long prayers, then you see A, B, C, and D. Of course, that's very, very rare. What we would see more likely is something like the bottom line, which is this prayer is this long, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 small little prayers. You've got a long prayer. That's how the services go. And then you can start to analyze what are the rubrics and then what helps divide them and their purpose. Real quick, before we continue in analyzing the rubric of the service, I want to make sure that people know what are these terms that we're talking about. when we're discussing services. So when I said shacharit, that may not be a term that everyone is familiar with. Shacharit is the common term for the morning service, the Saturday morning service. Shacharit comes from, shacharit, the word itself, means dawn, which basically corresponds with the time. And you'll see that the other ones function exactly the same way. Mincha, which represents what was the afternoon sacrifice at the temple, it was called the mincha. That represents the afternoon service, a very short service. And then the evening, ma'ariv. Ma'ariv literally means evening. That would be a Friday night service. Now, I had a wonderful question before we even began by our friend Judy over there. And it was, what does it mean when we say Kabbalat Shabbat? That's what I call Friday night Shabbat. And that was a move that I made when I came here at Temple. Before it was called Shabbat. And I said, no, it's Kabbalat Shabbat. What that means, Kabbalat Shabbat now represents another way to encapsulate two parts of a service. In fact, two services, if we think about it really the right way. Kabbalat Shabbat represents the aspect of the beginning parts of a Friday night service, which we will go through. The Psalms that we will see at the beginning, the opening prayers in that way, and coming to a hedet, L'cha Dodi. L'cha Dodi, and all the other aspects originated from Sfat, where Kabbalah, the mysticism, came from. This isn't particularly mystic, the poetry is, but some of the other poetry are just psalms and things like that. So when we say Kabbalat Shabbat, it's because this aspect of the service was invented by the Kabbalists. Before, it was just went straight into what we would call the Ma'ariv service. That's the rest of the service. Baruch Hu, Shema, B'Yahafta, Tefillah, Aleinu, all that stuff. That's the Ma'ariv service. The Kabbalat Shabbat service, if you go to Israel, they'll say Kabbalat Shabbat services, and depending on where you go, it can be 10 minutes or it can be an hour and a half. And then you've got Ma'ariv. In America, typically, we like to encapsulate all of it into the word Kabbalat Shabbat rather than saying Ma'ariv. It would be the same thing as saying Shabbat services or Ma'ariv, but Kabbalat Shabbat really does encapsulate the fact that we're going to do that part. We're going to do that warm-up part in the beginning. So I wanted to make sure that that was clarified. We think about in terms of the basic structure of any service. The morning service, if you've come, obviously you'll notice it is a great deal longer than a Friday night service, or certainly than a mincha service, and we'll find out why in a moment. But at the core of any of our liturgy, certainly Friday night and Saturday morning, you will see what is called the Shema and its blessings. The Shema and its blessings represent Baruch Hu, the prayers in between Baruch Hu and Shema, meaning Ma'ariv, Aravim tonight, and Ahavat Olam, or in the morning, Yotzer Or, and Ahava Rabbah. The Shema and the V'Yahafta, all the way into Emet V'Yatziv and Michamocha. That's that liturgy aspect. When we're done with that rubric, we go into what we call, we have other things in between, but again, the code, the basic code, you will see, is what's called the Amidah. You guys know that's when we stand up for what we call Tefillah. That represents the Avot, the Imachot, the Givurot, the Kedusha, Shalom Rav, all those aspects into silent prayer. That's what that means. And then on Saturday mornings, part of the rubric is what is called the public reading of the Torah. Torah is only read in the morning, and it is only read on Mondays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and holidays. And that becomes part of that rubric. So if you turn the page, I've given you sort of a basic idea of these core aspects. This isn't everything, obviously, but these are the core aspects of liturgy. And I want you to see we've got the call to prayer, which goes into the Shema and its blessings, which is the creed, basically. Shema is our creed. It's our declaration of monotheism, so it's got to be right there. That goes into Amidah. We call those petitions. Not only are we talking to God about how grateful we are in terms of being the God of our ancestors, how strong God is, how holy God is, but there's all kinds of other petitions on Saturday morning about keeping wickedness away, giving strength to Israel, all these sort of aspects, which we'll go into much more detail in later months. But those are the petitions, and then you come to the reading of the Torah. Really important for the visual here, it is not random, it goes up. Why do we think it goes up? No wrong answers, friends.
We're ascending the mountain of the Lord.
Oh, yeah. Ascending the mountain of the Lord, says Tom. Kind of. Actually, that's not bad. When we get to the reading of the Torah, we are supposed to be reenacting Sinai. I like that imagery. I think I'll probably steal that from you. So, but why do you think that we start call to prayer here and we set up and then we're right up here at the top, call to prayer? What do you think we're supposed to be doing? What do you think we're supposed to be feeling? Yes, Deb.
Getting closer and closer to God.
Closer and closer to God. Good, good. And
say your emotions are supposed
and your emotions are supposed to go up. Your energy, everything is supposed to go up. The reading of the Torah, quite right in terms of what Tom and Deb were saying, is that should be the finale, the biggest part. You are reenacting the revelation at Sinai. You're taking out the Torah. If you don't build that up right, boy, that's not going to work. If you've ever done a fanfare fireworks thing and it starts with the finale, everyone's like, what the heck? You got to build it up a little bit. And that's exactly what the liturgy is designed to do. You start at the call to prayer, and you get a little bit, you start to see yourself rise a little bit closer to God, a little bit more emotional, and then we're way up here for the reading of the Torah. If you turn the page, this is and we're getting in terms of the complete one, it is not complete, but we're going to add a couple things to the Saturday morning services. If you've been to one of our Saturday morning services, you'll see that they start a little differently than our Friday night services. Our Friday night services begin with Hine Matov, and they go into Kabbalat Shabbat. Kabbalat Shabbat, of course, is only Friday night. Saturday morning, the warm-up is a little bit different. Friday night, we get Kabbalat Shabbat to get us warmed up before our call to prayer. Saturday mornings, we've got to do a couple things. The Birchot Shachar, these are the morning blessings. The 3 pages where we ask the Kahal answer back, Amen. These are about getting up and giving thanks to God for all the little things that we've done, okay? As we get into that, as we finish that, we move into what is called Pizukei de Zimra. Pizukei de Zimra does have a little bit close of a relationship to Kabbalat Shabbat because they both involve psalms. These are verses of song. Literally, they're meant to be sung. They're meant to get you singing, get you excited, get you praising God and getting close to God. Psalm 150 is one of them. You've never said hallelujah more than in Psalm 150, right? That is supposed to get you ready for, as you can see, the call to prayer. And that moves into the Shema, and by that point, you're way up in the Amidah, and then, boy, when the Torah hits, are you ready to go or what? At least that's the idea, right? So if we turn to the next page, we add a couple more things, right? The reading of the Torah is this big, awesome thing, and then we've done Haftarah, we've listened to the rabbi drag on, right? And then, finally, we go down a little bit for Aleinu and Kaddish. Obviously, that is not supposed to be as high as reading of the Torah. We go back down, not all the way down. Obviously, we don't want to lose that energy. It's still important. But we do go down in the energy. Every finale needs to come down, and it needs to end with Aleinu and Kaddish. I don't know if you've ever really thought about services this way. Usually you're sitting, you're singing, you're praying, whatever it is. But the whole thing is meant and designed to get you to feel a certain way, to be involved in a certain way, and get you going, right? So now, when you go through a service, you should say, well, where are we? Check in with yourself. Where am I in terms of my energy level and where I'm supposed to be or not? That's the beautiful thing, by the way, about our Mishkan Tefillah. The reason why it has these alternative readings and these commentaries or things like that is because sometimes we're human and we're not where everyone else is. Sometimes we're higher, sometimes we're lower, sometimes we're more interested, sometimes we're not interested. You have the ability in Mishkan Tefillah to say, you know what, I'm not really feeling this right now. I'm feeling more like this. I'm going to turn the page and I'm going to read this beautiful poem. That is okay. That is perfectly fine. If I see you guys flipping through, I'm not taking it personally. If all of you do it, I'm a little worried. But if 1 or 2 of you do it, that's not a big deal because though there is supposed to be this real journey that it goes up on, it's okay. We're human. Sometimes we come in with our own baggage. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we're super Jew excited and we can't hold it in, right? And Aleinu is just not big enough, okay? So all of that really does help us complete what a service should look like. And we can talk about, and I can show you in the following months, what a Kabbalat Shabbat rubric looks like as well. This is a little bit more complicated, so I wanted to make sure we did this one first. If you turn the page, we take away those beautiful graphics, and we just go straight through. If you look at the Shachari, this is a standard outline of our morning services, of any morning services, really. You have what's called Birchot Shachar, which we talked about. Pizukei de Zimra are verses of praise. Baruch Hu, call to prayer. What we call Kriyat Shema, that includes these ideas of creation, revelation, the Shema, and redemption. Creation, we talk about Ma'ariv Aravim, or Yotzer Or, the creation of evening, the creation of light. Revelation is Ahava Rabbah, or Ahavat Olam. We got the Torah. Thank goodness we got the Torah. We get Kriyat Shema, which is literally the Shema and the V'ahavta. And then we get redemption, which is Michamocha. We made it. We're redeemed. All of that is part of that little rubric right there, okay? We then move into the Amidah. On weekdays, if you've ever davened with me on weekdays, I don't think we've ever done it, but there's 19 blessings in the Amidah. It is an extensive rubric. On the mornings, on Shabbat mornings, there's only 7. And on Friday night, it's totally different. But to let you know, that's what we're talking about when there's petitions, okay? There are literally 19 blessings on a weekday service of petitioning. Talk about getting you in a certain zone. Then we have Kriyat HaTorah, the call of the Torah service. Again, Monday, Thursday, Saturday festivals, and Rosh Chodesh, only for the Torah services. You hear the term sometimes Musaf, certainly in our conservative and Orthodox friends. Musaf is an additional service that is sometimes added. Sometimes you see it on Shabbat or festivals or Rosh Chodesh. Reform Judaism didn't feel it was necessary. It's just another repetition of these sort of things. So people can do it if they want, but it's pretty rare that we'll do Musaf. And that was something that was decided a long time ago, that if we're doing Shacharit, if we're doing Mincha, if we're doing Ma'ariv, and all these sort of things, Musaf isn't necessarily additional that you need. And of course, the concluding passages of Aleinu and Kaddish. And now, throughout the year, we will be talking about, hopefully, all of these prayers in detail. If you turn to the final page, the final graphic that I have for you here, this helps you understand 2 more aspects that I wanted to bring about. One is the Musaf prayer, to let you know where it goes, okay? Meaning that if we were to do it that way, we would read the Torah, then we'd have a whole nother little service, and then the Aleinu and the Kaddish, okay? That's typically where that goes. The other thing to mention, after the Amidah and before the reading of the Torah, is what's called silent prayer. Now, silent prayer didn't originally, it wasn't really part of the traditional liturgy. Eventually it did come into the liturgy, because after you've done the Amidah, if it's a weekday, you've done 19 petitions. If it's on Saturday morning, you've done 7. On Friday night, you'll see it's many of these blessings. All of these are the things that you need to do first, before you can start to think about your own individual prayers. Meaning you've got to hit Avot and Geburot and Kedusha. You have to remind yourself about that, about the God of our ancestors, God's strength, God's holiness. Then all the others, you have to hit those things first, because in Judaism, we're not a spontaneous prayer religion so much. Certainly it's allowed, but we're not one of those people who just pray randomly. We have a set that we're supposed to get to. Once we hit those things, then Judaism believes, okay, now you can focus on your own individual prayers. The interesting thing about silent prayer is you'll notice, this was a change that I did as well when I came here. It can appear relatively anywhere within these rubrics. On Saturday mornings, it's pretty standard. You do silent prayer and go right into the reading of the Torah, and I do that as well. On a Friday night, I made the choice to put the sermon in between the end of the Amidah and silent prayer. I'm able to do that, first of all, because the sermon doesn't exist in the liturgical rubric. It's one of those wonderful things that we borrowed from our Christian friends and put into our service. So what I'm doing there is adding another learning session within that moment, within that rubric of tefillah, and then giving you a moment to do silent prayer. One of my mentors in Dallas used to say, that's good. It also gives people some time to think about what you said. So it's a little selfish of it, but the truth is, when we have a sermon, we say Shabbat Shalom, we go to the Aleinu, you're doing something already, and I want you to sort of absorb it a little bit. But that's not the real reason why. You will also notice one thing that I want to speak about, that I've talked about from time to time throughout the year, is the placement of Misha Berach. Placement of Misha Berach, I put it here within the Amidah, before the sermon and before the silent prayer. I moved this prayer into the petitionary prayer, because we are praying in that way of petitions, okay? And I put that there. The reason why I have the ability to do that is because, as I've taught before, the Misha Berach prayer is traditionally only said during the Torah service. It is only said in between the Aliyot on a Saturday morning Torah service. So in traditional views, on a Friday night at Kabbalat Shabbat, Misha Berach doesn't happen. Reform Judaism said, we want it to happen. We want people to think about the people who are in need of healing on Friday night. They did that for two reasons. One, because we want to do that, but also Friday night services were getting much more attendance than Saturday morning services. We are the anomaly where Saturday morning services have more people than Friday night services, which is unheard of throughout the country, and I'm so excited about it. But throughout the country, most of the time, and by the way, the numbers that we get on Saturday morning are about the same numbers that we get at a 1,000 family congregation. Saturday mornings just aren't, they just don't stick so well with Reform Judaism. And I'm trying my best to change that here, to make sure that they are fun, they're still good, you should still come to them. But as I was saying, I will try very hard not to get tangential, but that will happen. But Misha Berach, as I said, only occurs during the Torah service, typically. So if we're going to make that choice, that liturgical choice, to move something from a Saturday morning service into a Friday night service, we get our pick as to where to do it. Some people do it after the sermon. Some people do it before Kaddish. Some people do it before Amidah. It doesn't matter because we are making that choice. I like to make my choices with the most researched and thought out sort of to the rubric, and so that's where I decided to place it. It's also the reason why I decided to place the sermon in that place, because I wanted to fit the mood that you're supposed to be in when we do it. Okay, you're supposed to be going up in Kabbalat Shabbat when you get to the Amidah, and there isn't really the highlight, the reading of the Torah. That doesn't happen on Friday nights. That was a big move that I did here in Temple Israel, and it was a little controversial, but when people figured out the reason why and how we were able to transform, people agreed to it, and so far it's gone very well. The Torah service does not exist in the Friday night liturgy. That was a reform move, again, because people were not attending Saturday morning services. They said, well, we've got to read Torah. When are we going to read Torah? And we moved it into the Friday night service. Here, I said, I think we can actually get people on Saturday mornings, so let's do it the way traditionally we're supposed to do it. Let's make Friday night service the way it's supposed to be and Saturday morning services the way it's supposed to be. And when I say supposed to be, that doesn't mean that one way is right or wrong, because there are plenty of congregations out there who still read Torah on Friday night, and that's their choice to do that. What I'm saying in terms of this way or that way is looking from a rubric point of view. I want on a Friday night to fit the right rubric and the right way for you guys to get there. To put the Torah service in, to go from lots of what my cantor friend would call singy, clappy, clappy, right? Very upbeat Kabbalat Shabbat stuff into the solemn and serious Torah service, right? Is a break. It is a serious change and a hard right turn because it doesn't belong in that liturgy. Whereas on the Saturday morning service, you can see here, everything leads to it. Everything's built to lead from it. That's where we should read it. So that was the ideas in terms of that change. So with Learner's Minyan, I throw a lot of information at you in this style, but I want to take a moment always. We've got probably 5 or 6 minutes before Kabbalat Shabbat begins. If there are any questions about anything like that. Yes, Lou?
I was trying to remember the 19 blessings in the weekday of Edah.
Yes.
Is there something special, significant about that number?
It's called the Shemona Esrei, which is actually 18, and then there's another one that you add. 18 is a big number for us, right? Chai, and then there's another one technically that you add. Correct, right. So people do refer to it as the Shemona Esrei, the 18. I'm saying there are 19, but I would refer to it as the Shemona Esrei. So 19, no, there's no significance. 18, you got it. Absolutely. Chai, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So you said the sermon is not really traditional, like it's a newer invention, so how new is it?
Hard to say in terms of that. Reform Judaism, in terms of the 19th century, certainly experimented with it, how long it was, where you put it, all that sort of stuff. I would say certainly 19th century was when we started messing with it. But That doesn't, by the way, mean that rabbis didn't speak, right? One thing, sometimes they did speak, sometimes they spoke later, but they were the teachers of the synagogue, right? One thing that really separates Reform Judaism from Orthodoxy is you'll see that the rabbi isn't up there for Orthodoxy. The rabbi doesn't necessarily lead the service. He's not necessarily the shliach tzibor, the service leader. The rabbi is the teacher who makes laws, the judge, that sort of stuff. In Reform Judaism, if you can believe it, the rabbi does more stuff than traditional stuff. So the rabbi is not only the teacher and the person you go to for questions, the rabbi is also the person to do pastoral care. The rabbi is also the person who leads services, right? So all these sort of adjustments had to be made in the fact that a rabbi was now leading services, but there's no rule that says it has to be a rabbi. Obviously, most people say if you've got a rabbi, he or she should probably lead the service. But if the rabbi's out, we've got people who can do it, and actually any of you could do it. That is the standard idea of leading a service, to become a service leader. It is an honor, but it is something you can do. So if that answers your question, and probably 5 more. Sorry. Yes, Tom.
I'm sure that Hasidic rabbis would like to get away from the same emotion. Would the non-Hasidic Orthodox have the same view?
In terms of the rubric? In terms of ascending? And that's,
getting more and more emotional.
yes. So it breaks denominational lines. This is at the very, very basis of any denomination. So Hasidism obviously adds a lot of joy and a lot of sort of dancing and stuff like that. It's really amazing. But that's their take on that. Their take on Kabbalat Shabbat. You know, but all of us follow that rubric. All of us are in the same way following that rubric. So yeah. Any last questions before we take 2 minutes and do Kabbalat Shabbat? Okay, thank you so much for your questions and your attention. And again, Learner's Minyan will be the first Friday of every month, unless obviously something happens. And again, it's 25 minutes to just give you a little learning. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you.